Thanks very much, Fiona. Hello, welcome to Newsday with Nomia Iqbal and Tom Hagler.
We'll be talking about the latest bombings in Syria, migrants in Europe, Austria's new president, and Brazil's political crisis.
Let's start in Syria, though. According to monitoring groups there, more than 140 people are believed to have died in a string of bombings by Islamic State militants at two seaside resorts. The targets included the emergency wing of a hospital and a bus station, both in the government-held towns of Jableh and Tartus. The so-called Islamic State group have claimed responsibility, but Syria's government is accusing Turkey, Qatar and Saudi Arabia of being behind the blasts. For an explanation of what was going on, we've been speaking to J.M. Berger, co-author of ISIS, the State of Terror.
This isn't the first time we've seen ISIS strike at the Syrian regime. In February, there were bombings in Damascus and Homs. This is an extension of the activity that we've seen from them over the last several months, that as their military activity gets curtailed, their terrorist activity has been stepping up.
I was going to say this is suicide, car bombs, bus stops, hospitals. These are classic terrorism tactics.
Yes, and it's a pretty substantial terrorist attack. One of the things that, I think people often fail to appreciate is that when you have a jihadist insurgency, something like ISIS or al-Shabaab in Somalia, when they lose their territory, when they start to come under military pressure, it frees up tremendous resources for terrorism. It makes what's a very small insurgency is a very large terrorist organization.
So is it a sign of weakness for them, or do you think they're becoming more powerful?
I think that there's been continued signs of weaknesses. We had a speech released by Abu Muhammad al-Adnani, the second in command of ISIS, over the weekend. And in that speech, he really made significant concessions to the idea that, they might not be able to hold on to all of their territory, and pledging to continue as an insurgency if they lose their territory. ISIS's propaganda and its leadership speeches tend to be very triumphalist about their successes and victories, so this was kind of a notable change.
Well, in terms of the territory they hold, what is it? Because at one point we were told that IS held about a third of Iraq. I'm not quite sure what it is with Syria. How much territory do they have?
I can't put a number off the top of my head, but the space between Raqqa and Mosul is really the most significant space that they hold. Those two cities are kind of their core holdings, and if they lose one or both of them, then we really have to question whether their proto-state experiment is really continuing at that point.
And of course, there's this Fallujah offensive that's happening, which will presumably make them even weaker. Or the opposite? What do you think?
There's certainly the prospect that it's going to make them weaker. What we've seen is that there's been a lot of talk about Fallujah over the course of almost the entire period that since ISIS made its big territorial gains in 2014. And, so far we have not seen Fallujah fall. So, the offensive that's happening there, I think, seems to be more significant than the past talk. When they lose these territories, it does certainly have an impact on them. But by the time we take a town like that away from them, they've really extracted all the value out of that place. So they've taken all the money, they've taken the currency, they've taken the goods, and what they leave is a smoldering ruin. So, it's not. What's more important, I think, is that we keep them from taking new territories than take towns away from them, because when they take a new town, they're able to get access to new resources, to new money, to new goods, to new military supplies.